Hello everyone, I'm glad to have you once again at the Manifested e-learning platform. The subject is Advanced Auditing and Assurance. We, in our last session, completed topic number 2. Today we are moving on to chapter number 3, Professional and Ethical Considerations. This chapter is organized into 4 sections. Number 1, Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants, in line with International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. That is the IESBA code, IESBA, IESBA. All right. The second part of this topic is fundamental principles, threats, and safeguards. 3, advertising, publicity, obtaining professional work and fees. Number 4, professional skepticism in the context of errors and fraud. We will be studying a subtopic at a time. For example, in our today's lesson, we're going to study the Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants in line with the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. And in studying the IESB code, we will be highlighting the key components of the IESBA, IESBA code, the IESBA code, okay? The Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants in line with the International Ethics Standards Board for Professional Accountants, IESBA. So that is the first thing we are going to do in our today's lesson. Let me write down the subtopic. The subtopic is Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. I am repeating, we will be focusing on the International Ethics, IESBA, Standards Board for Professional Accountants, IESBA. Do you understand? International Ethics Standards Board for Professional Accountants. A stands for Professional Accountants. I repeat, International Ethics Standards Board for Professional Accountants. In our today's lesson, we're going to cover the basic components, the key components. Key components of the IESBA code. You are going to study the key components of the IESBA code. IESBA code. International Ethics Standards Board for Professional Accountants. IESBA. So in this lesson, I'll be mentioning IESBA. So when I say IESBA, please understand I'm referring to the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants. For accountants. Now, candidates, the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, I'm talking about the code, the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants. It is a code of ethics for, first of all, it is a code of ethics for professional accountants. Code. It is a code of ethics for professional accountants. And this code provides a comprehensive set of ethical principles and requirements that guide the behavior and conduct of professional accountants worldwide. That's why it is referred to as international. Worldwide. Do you understand? And candidates, this code sets the global benchmark for ethical standards in accounting profession, and it is applicable to all professional accountants, regardless of their role or regardless of the sector in which they work. It is a global benchmark for professional accountants. So when a body like ISPAC, when it comes up with the code of ethics, then the board, the ISPAC, the institute makes reference to the IESBA code, borrows a lot from the IESBA code. Is that clear? Before I mention the first key opponent, is that clear? That's the IESBA code. It is an international body, right, that sets global benchmark for ethical standards. So the first key component of the IESBA code is fundamental principles. We have first of all discussed the fundamental principles. That's the first component. Fundamental principles. The IESBA code is based on a set of fundamental principles that professional accountants should adhere to in line with their professional practice. They should adhere to in their professional practice. And these principles include objectivity, they include integrity. Let me begin with integrity. The principles are: 1, integrity; 2, objectivity, professional competence and due care. Another principle is confidentiality and professional behavior. I repeat, integrity. Let me put them down. It's very important. These are very important principles. Very important principles. Integrity. The first one, integrity. The accountants should be honest, truthful, and straightforward in all their dealings. Objectivity. The professional accountants should not allow anything to blur their objectivity. There should be no bias. Therefore, the accountants should be as independent as possible. Professional competence and due care. Professional competence and due care. Confidentiality. 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 Then professional behavior. The behavior of the accountants must be above board. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5. This is, we will be discussing this in detail as we move on, but this is one component of the IESBA code, fundamental principles. The second component is what we call conceptual framework. Conceptual framework. Conceptual framework approach. Conceptual framework approach. Now, the IESBA code follows a conceptual framework. The IESBA code follows a conceptual framework approach that assists professional accountants in identifying, in evaluating, and also addressing threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. So sometimes the accountants may have a problem applying these principles. There could be threats to these principles, fundamental principles. So the code has a conceptual framework that assists professionals in identifying, evaluating, and also addressing the threats to compliance with the fundamental principles. And the conceptual framework provides guidance on how to recognize, provides guidance on how to navigate ethical dilemmas, ensuring that professional accountants make ethical decisions in complex situations. Because candidates, ethical issues can come with some level of ethical dilemmas. So the code has a way, a conceptual framework approach where the accountants can be helped in ensuring that they surmount the complex situations, ethical situations or dilemmas in which they find themselves in when carrying out their professional duties. The third key component, requirements. Ethical requirements. The IESBA code establishes specific ethical requirements that professional accountants should follow, and these requirements cover areas such as independence, areas such as conflict of interest, confidentiality, the professional competence, areas such as professional skepticism, and provision of quality services. So this code has clear guidelines to promote ethical conduct and also ensure that integrity, ensure that there is integrity in the accounting profession. Ethical requirements. The code establishes ethical requirements that professional accountants should follow. So as an accountant, at least you have a basis on or guidance on ethics. Because if an accountant adheres to these requirements, if the accountant follows the requirements, the ethical requirements and the guidelines, all right, then there would be provision of quality services. There is at least a standard, there is a guide, and that helps the profession in a big way. Let's move on to the other key component of the IESBA code, and this is the applicability of or to different roles. Applicability to different roles. Applicability to different roles is yet another key component of the IESBA code. The IESBA code recognizes the diverse roles and the diverse responsibilities of professional accountants, and then provides guidelines that the guidelines provides guidance, not guidelines, but provides guidance that is applicable to all areas of the profession. For example, the code has guidelines to accountants in the public sector or public practice. The code has guidance to accountants or professionals in the private sector or business and industry. There is guidance to the public sector. There are guidelines to those working in education. There are guidelines in other sectors where professional accountant services are provided. Applicability to different roles. Because sometimes the requirements, the environment in which professional accountants work are different. The environment in the public sector is different from the environment in business and industry. The environment is different when one works in education sector. So the code has that component, applicability to different roles. The code provides different guidelines that could be applied to those working in different scenarios or spaces. 5. Monitoring and enforcement. Monitoring and enforcement. Monitoring and enforcement. The IESBA code encourages member bodies, encourages regulators, encourages professional accountancy organizations to adopt and enforce the code of ethics within their jurisdictions. Because because compliance with the code is essential for maintaining public trust and confidence in the accounting profession. So there is that element of monitoring and enforcement. So the IESBA code encourages different professional bodies from different countries, because we say this is a global, these ethics are meant for use globally. So the code encourages the members who are drawn from different jurisdictions, from different countries, to enforce or to comply with the guidelines that are provided within this code. The member bodies, we have regulators who are members, we have professional accountancy organizations like the Institute of Certified Accountants of Kenya. They are encouraged to adopt and enforce the code of ethics within their jurisdiction, because this is an international best practice or international benchmark, so that there could be public trust and confidence in the accounting profession, especially where we have many cases now of unethical behavior that is exhibited in many countries in the accounting profession. So there is need for the enforcement and monitoring of the adherence to this code of ethics. So these are the 5 key components of the IESBA code. I've just summarized, but the code, you need to familiarize yourself with the details, with the full code. You need to read the IESBA code so that you can, as you practice, as you train, so that you are a person who is of integrity, a professional who does his work with objectivity. You exhibit professional competence and due care, and you are such a professional who maintains privacy, who keeps information meant for clients in confidence, and also your behavior is such that it does not bring disrepute to the profession, professional behavior. Now, candidates, in closing, I can say that the IESBA Code of Ethics for Professional Accountants provides a comprehensive framework that promotes ethical behavior, that promotes integrity, that promotes professionalism in the accounting profession. And by adhering to the code, professional accountants, you being one of them, demonstrate their commitment to upholding high ethical standards and ensuring public interest is protected. Because it's not enough to just be a competent person or someone who can do your work. Your work should be done in such a way that brings public trust to the profession. Upholding high ethical standards. So these are the components of the IESBA code. Just trying to break it down so that when you get into the details, you understand that the code has fundamental principles. And these are the main principles: integrity, objectivity, professional competence and due care, confidentiality, and professional behavior. The code also has what we call conceptual framework approach. Conceptual framework approach. There is also ethical requirements. Ethical requirements. The IESBA code establishes specific ethical requirements that professional accountants should follow. So this makes life easy for you as an accountant. There are specific ethical requirements that you ought to follow as an accountant. And these requirements cover a wide area. Matters to do with independence, matters to do with conflict of interest, confidentiality, professional behavior, professional competence, and so on. There are clear, specific guidelines, ethical requirements. Then we've discussed about the applicability to different roles. The code here, candidates, recognizes the diverse roles, the different roles, the different responsibilities of professional accountants, and provides guidelines that is applicable to all areas of the profession. It applies to accountants or professionals in the public sector, in business, in industry, in education, in all areas where you would have professional accountants working. So again, that makes life easy for accountants. You have a guide on how to behave, a guide on how to carry out yourself, a guide on how to execute your professional duties. Okay? Applicability. Monitoring, there's also monitoring and enforcement. I can add, candidates, international. Let me put yet another point which almost skipped my mind. International convergence. International convergence, very important. Now, this code, candidates, the IESBA code is developed with the objective of achieving convergence of ethical standards globally. Why? Because it is aligned with the principles established by the International Federation of Accountants. And this code is designed to be compatible with other international standards and regulatory frameworks. there is that element, that component of international convergence. All right? International convergence. So that will mark the end of our today's lesson. We've introduced the topic professional and ethical considerations. Today we've covered the key elements or key components of the IESBA code. In our next lesson, we're going to get into the details of the fundamental principles. When studying fundamental principles, we'll cover the threats and safeguards. Threats and safeguards. Threats and safeguards. So thank you for attending the lesson. Bye-bye.